Hi, my friend. I'm so excited for you to listen to today's episode. We are talking about how to look and feel confident in every photo, no matter your size, with Christine Buzan. Welcome to the Live Unrestricted podcast, a show where you'll learn how to heal your relationship with food and your body so that you can focus your time and energy on more important things like your personal growth. I'm your host, Sabrina Magna, food freedom coach, and my mission is to help make your life happier and healthier without stress, overwhelm, or guilt about food. If you love the show, please do go out and share it. And if you're looking for support with your relationship with food, details about my programs are in the show notes. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's jump in. Thank you so much for being here, for pressing play. Before we get into today's interview, you're probably going to notice that my voice is a little raspy, and that is because I have been sick for the past week. I lost my voice, and this is the first day that I'm feeling a little bit back to normal. So just wanted to get that out of the way for you, in case you were wondering, like, why does Sabrina sound so different? But I'm just really excited to play this conversation with you because Christine is someone who we run in the same circles. We have the same business coach, and I stumbled upon her Instagram sometime last year. And the second I saw it, I was like, okay, I need to get this girl on the podcast. And then we met in December, and truly, like, she just radiates confidence. And what I really love about that is that she's not allowing that to get in the way of her being seen, being loud, living her life in the most bold and authentic way possible. So a little bit about Christine is she's a posing expert that empowers her followers to show up as their boldest, most authentic selves in front of the camera. She's a huge believer that no one is born photogenic, and posing for photos is a skill that can be learned. Her viral TikToks and work has been featured on Good Morning America, BuzzFeed, the New York Post, and so much more. It is such a treat that we get to learn from her. You'll hear I suck at posing for pictures, and I learned so much. I was taking notes. So in this episode, you're going to learn a little bit about how Christine got into this pretty niche business, a lot of the mindset blocks that she had to overcome, a lot of the mindset blocks that hold women back from showing up authentically and boldly and taking pictures and feeling confident. And then we go into more tactical, practical tips and strategies to pose and lighting and camera angles and all of that stuff to look and feel your best in every photo that you take so that you can have memories with your kids, with your loved ones, with your partner, and look back on them fondly instead of wishing that you had taken more photos or allowed yourself to be in them. So without further ado, let's hear that conversation with Christine. Okay, so I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. We got to meet for the first time in person in December, and I love everything about you. I love your energy. I love the confidence and the brightness that you bring to a room. You have an amazing social media. So we are so lucky to have you here on the podcast to talk to our audience. And I have so many questions about how you got to where you are today. So thank you so much, Christine, for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm surprised it took us that long to finally meet. I feel like we've been in the same area for a while, but just kind of in different orbits. And it's funny how timing works out like that.
I know. And I remember when I first stumbled upon your Instagram, I mean, you have a massive following. You have 800,000 followers on Instagram. And I was looking, and I was right away, the first time I stumbled upon it, I was like, I need to have this girl on my podcast because, I mean, there's so many women in my community. This is something I hear all the time, which is I don't want to take pictures. I don't like the way that I look in pictures. I have all of these pictures of my kids or my husband and my kids. I'm not in them. And it's one of those things where when you're older, you look back on it and it's such a sense of regret of I wish that I could go back in time and take more pictures and have more of those memories. So I really want to talk about this, how we can feel more confident posing in pictures so that we can have those memories. So can you tell us a little bit about your story? Like, how did you get to where you are teaching women how to look good and feel confident in pictures?
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like with life, they always say that you take different opportunities and it can be kind of scattered, or you jump from doing this to doing that. And then when you look back, that's kind of when you realize how everything fits together. And that's kind of been my experience. So when I was 21 years old, I moved to New York City. I was still in college. I had an internship with Marie Claire magazine. So my main job during my internship, I was in the fashion closet, was to process all of the samples, request samples, steam them, get them ready. Then the editors would pick which pieces they wanted to use on the photo shoots. And then if you were lucky, you as an intern would be able to actually go to the photo shoot, set everything up, steam it, and then help the models get dressed. So I was fortunate when I was at that internship that I had actually a lot of opportunity to be on set. And so I remember the first time I was on set, it was a really long photo shoot. I got there at like 6 a.m., ended up leaving at 1:30 in the morning. Of course, everything was unpaid at the time, but it was one of the most transformational experiences, I think, of my life, because it opened me up to a whole new level of possibility. So I got to the photo shoot, steamed everything, models did hair and makeup super early in the morning. And it was really interesting because, when the model came in, they were my age, if not even younger. We were the two youngest people on the set. Everyone was older meaning in their 30s. But, when you're 20 years old, you think anyone in their 30s is old. And, this model was very reserved and kind of shy in their real life personality. But then when I saw them get in front of the camera, it was insane. It was almost as if a switch went off and something just transformed. And they were able to really bring to life the photos through their posing, really, and kind of step into an entirely different new character. And I was really intrigued and transfixed by this, especially because at the time in the early 2010s, fashion blogging became a thing. And this was very early within the whole blogging thing. Instagram was something that very few of us had at the time. I had an Instagram account, but at that time I was mainly editing my photos in Instagram so I could then share them to Facebook, and have like a really cool like retro feel. So I had started my own little fashion blog at the time because everybody who worked in fashion in New York City was doing it. And so I had to be in front of the camera as well, kind of directing and creating my own little shoots and doing writing that came with it. So as I spent time on these photo shoots, watching the models, I kind of, got the courage up to be like, hey, how do you do this? How do you do that? That kind of thing. And would take that feedback and I'd use it for my own photos for my blog. And I saw how much my photos had transformed. And so after Marie Claire, I actually went on to Jones Group, which at the time was a Fortune 500 company. And basically every single product that was in the mall or like at Macy's, like Anne Klein and Nine West and all those different brands, Rachel Roy, they were all owned by Jones Group at the time. And so I was the assistant to the fashion director of the entire company. So my job, basically, I was on shoots like 4 days a week with these models and I was learning, okay, how do you do this? How do you do that? We'd work with the same ones for different brands. So it was kind of, just nice being able to form that rapport. I'd use it even more with my blogging, that kind of thing. So fast forward then to 2014, 2015, it became very clear that people were using social media sites like Instagram and LinkedIn, not just as a way to share photos with like their family, but as a way to kind of get ahead in life. The bloggers became Instagrammers and later on became influencers. And then you'd see that everybody had LinkedIn accounts. You'd need a headshot for your LinkedIn account. And dating apps were on the rise. People would need photos for their dating apps. So I started to see that, hey, photos really, I knew firsthand you can transform the way that you look in photos. It's just a matter of employing specific things, doing specific things, and like getting in the right mindset. And I had already had that kind of under control. But as my friends and family needed to use photos for their own lives, I was like, hey, I can kind of help you. I can kind of teach you. So everything kind of grew. I continued my study. We could be here for like the full hour just kind of talking about the back history. But that's really kind of how it all came to be, is out of just society was changing. I had already started to master and explore a skill I started mastering it further and then broke it down in a simple way, basically, that everyday people could use it.
I love that. And I had no idea you had such a like deep background in fashion and photo shoots, being able to observe models and what they're doing. And I'm curious, did you ever struggle with your own comfort in front of the camera, with body image, with confidence when you were taking photos?
Yeah, for sure. So one thing that I didn't mention is between the years 2013 and 2014, I had gained 70 pounds. So at the time, my diagnosis has kind of changed, it's kind of gone away, but I had obsessive compulsive disorder. And so I started taking different medication to help with that. And I ended up gaining 70 pounds within the matter of a year. So I had become really comfortable blogging and posing for photos as somebody who was like a size 6, size 8, maybe at like their heaviest at the time. And then I went from a 6'8" to being like a 14, 16 within a matter of a year. So that was a really big difference. And I had to basically decide at that point, do I want to stop, fashion blogging and being visible in that sense? Or do I want to continue doing that and kind of figure out a different way when I'm posing for photos? So for me, it was really figuring out that different way. And I kind of had to dive in even deeper to retrain myself how to pose. So that was kind of another really big thing that led me to kind of studying deeper and coming up with these kind of universal methodologies, because I felt that way. I wanted to hide when your body changes so rapidly and it just sneaks up on you, especially when it's something that's health related or medication related. The last thing you want to do, you can't figure out how to dress yourself, first of all. So, like simple things like going to work or going to a family event, it becomes 10 times harder, especially back then. We have a lot more options with online shopping now than we did a decade ago, which is awesome. And there's so much more inclusion, especially within, you're able to find influencers who actually look like you and you're able to, shop what they do. And I have so many of them that even I follow now that I'm not in the fashion space as much. And I'm just like, I'm going to purchase that because it looks good on you. You've vetted it for me. It's the best thing ever.
Mhm.
But, back then we didn't have that. It wasn't like Amazon wasn't as big as it is now where you could find whatever you want. And when you can't figure out what to wear to your grandma's birthday party, you're not going to want to be in pictures at your grandma's birthday party if even getting out the door and something appropriate to wear is hard enough.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I can't remember the question because I kind of went in a circle, but I've definitely been there in my own journey and it can be really frustrating. Definitely, it's hard and it's hard to kind of overcome that mentally when there's so many other factors at play when you feel like a stranger in your own body.
Yeah. And I think that you mentioned you kind of had two choices. It was either hide and change your job, change the way that you do things, stop taking pictures, or figure it out.
Yeah.
And because you had your background in fashion, I think you had a lot of that knowledge that most people don't have. And
Mhm.
so a lot of people end up going for option number one, which is, I guess I'll just stop taking pictures because I don't like the way that I look at them. And there's kind of this mindset exercise that I use with some of my clients, which is, sometimes we go to these social events and we feel pretty good. Like we put on this outfit where we feel confident in it. We're able to be fully present, have conversations with people. And then someone decides to snap a picture and
Mhm.
you see the way that you look. And it's like immediately now, instead of seeing life through your own eyes, you start seeing life through other people's eyes and you start thinking, oh my God, is that what I look like? And then that instantly affects your mood. So it's like something so insignificant as a picture can completely ruin your night.
Yeah. And that's something that I go over super in depth, with my own kind of methodology, especially in my program, is I always talk about if you've ever looked at a photo that NASA has taken of the moon or like the US government or some kind of like astronomical society, you'll see that the moon looks way different in that photo than it does if you were to go outside on your iPhone and take a photo of the moon. And the thing that's really cool about being human is we have the ability to position and pose our bodies. The moon does not. The moon is stuck there. The moon is going to look the way that they look. It waxes and wanes, but it's still going to be the moon. Whereas if you can see how big of a difference a camera can make in how the moon looks, which is for all intents and purposes, like a static object that doesn't change its pose. It's even more so with a human. But the cool thing is, being a human, we're able to adjust the way that we position ourselves to the camera. So, yes, cameras are infallible. They're not perfect devices. There's differences between actual like DSLR cameras, mirrorless cameras, cameras you use with your iPhone, cameras that you use if you have an Android is going to be different even from iPhone. So there's room for that technical nuance. But the thing is, we are not our photos. This is just a snapshot of an image of a moment in time. It's not a picture of you. It's a picture of you, but it isn't actually you because you are a living, breathing, moving human that's going to look different in different settings. Like the version of yourself that you see in the mirror, that's not even you either. That's just a reflection of yourself. So it's impossible to capture a human as it is, but we just need to use the tools that we have to do the best that we can. And like you talked about with me in fashion and my background, I was in a position of privilege because I had access to resources and kind of different, fashion knowledge. Posing for photos is the same. It's a skill set. It's just like learning, how to play chess or how to knit or how to play basketball. You have to know what to do. So you have to have the knowledge. You have to form muscle memory through repetition and practice. And then you have to fine tune. For instance, if you're playing basketball, you're shooting a free throw, it doesn't make it in. Okay, you need to figure out what exactly is it that's making, the ball not go through the net. You're just not going to be like, oh, well, I'm broken or the net's broken. If it's something that you want to do, you're going to fine tune it. And it's the same way with being in front of the camera and posing for photos. It's just kind of figuring out the techniques that you can do to put yourself forward in the best way that feels authentic to you.
Yeah. Do you have a lot of women who come to you, who work with you, who are in bigger bodies, who are struggling with their confidence? Would you say that's like a big majority of the women who work with you?
It's funny because the variety is actually really large in terms of the women that I work with. So it's interesting. It's in business they always say like, oh, niche down. But the thing is, it's people of all different ages. Within my program, I have women who are in their 20s. I have women who are in their 70s. It's kind of a universal, no matter, I guess, what your body looks like. It's always hard because we're always in comparison. I think not even with the media and other people, but with ourselves. And when you live in a body, the only constant in life is change. And the same goes for you as a person, whether that's your spiritual or mental development or even your physical body. Everything is constantly going to change. And that's one of the things that makes it so unique about being a human, that's so beautiful. But it can also be alarming because if you're used to relying on posing one way, and that's how you pose throughout your teens and your 20s, and then your body changes, if you don't know the actual fundamentals, it's kind of like, okay, well, what am I doing with myself at this point? So I think it's, although I do have people, it's a very wide variety of different kinds of bodies that come to me, but I think it's like, the universality of change is something that everybody's feeling in some capacity and wants to be able to adjust to.
Just in the same way that body image issues are universal and it's not
Mhm.
even dependent on the way that you look. Like I had body image issues when I was my thinnest and unhealthiest. So it can happen for everyone. And I really want to get into some practical tips and
Mhm.
strategies and, as much of your methodology as you're willing to share with us.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, I have one more question, and it's more so on mindset. So we live in a society that is so cruel to women in larger bodies, and it almost feels like you are rebelling when you're choosing to be confident in a bigger body. It's like you're swimming against the stream. You are deciding to do something that is outside of cultural norms, which is I'm going to be unapologetically accepting and confident in my here and now body. Would you say that that's a barrier for some of the women that you work with mindset wise, is like just giving yourself permission to have acceptance and confidence in your body?
Yeah, I feel like that's honestly kind of a big thing for everyone I've noticed, especially depending. I think the thing that's the main thing is that I've noticed personally is the background in which they were raised. I know that a lot of my students who come from very religious backgrounds, especially those that are in certain like demographic areas in the United States, there's a lot of internalized shame around being visible. And even, if you're visible as somebody who does fit into the conventional, like kind of norms of how society thinks you should be, still, even then, like putting yourself out there and being perceived as vain, I think vanity is something that really comes to mind that can be really stressful for a lot of people that I've seen because, we're taught, okay, we should make ourselves small. We shouldn't take up space, especially if you are somebody who fits outside of the norm. Like the cool thing about social media and the time we're at now is that you can find visibility for any kind of background or body type or upbringing or kind of, modes of thought. You can seek them out through the algorithm, which is really cool. But the thing about photos is that things have changed. And I think that's what's really hard kind of to adapt to is, we all get older in life and, we all have, I know that James, our business coach, talks about belief systems or BS, what we carry around with us about, oh, well, the sky's blue. It's like, okay, is the sky always blue or is it blue right now? Because it's black at night, it can be orange at sunset, just like those beliefs that we have that untangling them. But the truth is that photos are a means of communication. They're almost as important as learning how to speak or learning how to write to express yourself. You need to have a photo as a means of expressing who you are, whether you're trying to find a job, whether you're trying to find a romantic partner. Even if you're somebody, you're running for president, you need a photo. You're writing a book, you need a photo. You're a real estate agent, you need a photo. So I think it's really helpful to think of yourself as, okay, this is a form of self-expression rather than an act of vanity. It's an act of necessity almost.
Oh, I love that perspective. Like this moving away from this is me like putting myself out there and I'm vain and it really is this sense of expressing yourself. It's an extension of yourself. And I know I did my very first professional photo shoot about a year ago. And when I got the photos back, obviously I didn't know how to pose. Like I've never been taught how to pose. And I got the photos back and I thought like, this doesn't feel like me. It doesn't have my energy coming through. And I wish I had you back then to kind of coach me through it. But I totally understand what you mean. And I think that being able to challenge some of the beliefs that you hold that are keeping you hidden is like a really big thing that's going to help you overcome that hurdle. So if you're working with someone, let's say my audience who's listening to this right now, and maybe they're like me and they don't know how to pose in photos. When you start working with clients, what does that look like? What does that journey look like?
Yeah. So really the first thing, within my program is clearing out, it's the mental cobwebs. It's the mindset aspect. Because the thing is, with self-image in general, self-image is super interesting. And well, I can't remember the name, but what is it called? The name of the book,
Is it called cybernetics?
Yes, something like that. It is so interesting.
Yeah.
I think that's always, that's something that really kind of, I read that a long time ago. I cannot remember the name of it. I'm so sorry. I sound unprofessional, not sense. But
if I had a fact checker, I would have it fact checked, but we don't. So I'll look it up after this and I'll put it in the show notes.
But essentially, it was written by someone who used to be a plastic surgeon who then eventually went on to become a psychologist and work within psychology because they're fascinated by it. But when they started their career as a plastic surgeon, they were curious as to why, some people would get, let's say their nose had been, changed with an accident or something like that. And then they, go get plastic surgery, have their nose readjusted. It would look like their old nose, but they still weren't happy, like things like that, and they found that basically it was an issue where those clients and those patients who had a strong sense of self-image were able to get, cosmetic surgery, still be happy, while those who did not. So I think that that's something really important, especially when it comes to posing for photos, is you need to really have a strong understanding of things like photos versus realities, photos versus the mirror, and your own kind of internal belief system and check and tools to be able to sort through that. Because let's say, you're somebody who has gained weight, you don't like the way you look in photos, you all of a sudden just lose 70 pounds overnight. you're probably still not going to like the way that you look in photos.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reality of things. I think a lot of the times, not even with photos, but with other things, people always prey on a magic fix. And it's like the people who win the lottery and then end up broke a year later. It's a self-image issue. So really that's where we start, is kind of within, I call it perception, kind of having that mental perception figured out. So
Mm.
once we go through that, and that's really like kind of a 2 week activity, really like getting deep in there, we then go through understanding the camera's perspective. So similarly, if you know how to pose, that's great. But if somebody's taking the photo, it's blurry, it's dark, there's a light, illuminating your head, you're not going to like the way you look. So I think that that's something that I do that a lot of people don't do within their trainings, is really integrating that mindset as well as the technical standpoint of where the camera is, to kind of be able to use that to your full advantage. Because again, it's like with the photos of the moon. If you have the right camera, the moon's going to look great. You don't have the right
Mm-hmm.
camera, it's not going to look great. And you don't need to have a professional, $5,000 camera to take a photo of the moon. You can learn tips and tricks that work really well with your own phone to kind of maximize everything.
Okay, so
So
can I
once we
ask you a
figure out,
question about
yeah,
that? So, from what little I know, would it be to have, like, I guess the best visual and the best lighting is you want the lighting behind? Like, you don't want the sun or the window in the picture. Like, you want it behind the camera, correct?
yeah. So right now I'm facing a window.
Yeah.
So I have the light shining on me directly. If
Hmm.
I was to take you and turn around, which I'd have to unplug, if there's Nicholas. Okay, so so if we move to the side, you see I'm illuminated by the window. Over here is dark. This
Yeah.
isn't working as well because we end up getting a lot. You see the fine lines on my face show a lot more.
So now
They
I'm
don't
starting
show
to
as much
see
here.
my
Yeah,
camera is not doing me wonders here because I've got the light
this
on my left side.
the
Yeah.
side, yeah. And then if we go to the back, I'm completely backlit. So this,
Yeah.
if you have a photo that looks like this, okay, you're gonna be like, well, that's a bad photo. But if I'm taking a selfie, there's a big difference between right here and the way that my face looks, as well as right here and the way that my skin looks.
Yeah.
And which version of me is the real me? Which version is the fake me? They're both the real me.
Hmm.
It's just a matter of how I look when lighting hits me at different times.
Hmm.
So it's things like that, as well as if I was to look at, I bet that this is a wild interview. This is the first time somebody's taking Zoom for a ride for you. You look at a picture of me like this,
Okay,
my
so for
head is
anyone who's
focused,
listening, she is lifting her camera,
or
so
my
it's looking
camera.
down on her
You look at a picture of me like this, my
with her
eyes aren't
camera
focused.
down.
My chin is the focus.
Yeah.
Versus if I go like this, it's much more even. So it's just understanding. So for the people who are listening, how does lighting play into your photo? How does the camera angle play into your photo? Just tips for being able to take, full body photos versus seated photos, just little things like that that can seem a little bit overwhelming. But even if you don't know how to pose for photos, just understanding how the perspective of the camera can really kind of, just change your photo, I think is that alone is really empowering,
Mm.
understanding just like how to use this device to your knowledge.
Yeah, like this might not be a very complicated question, but my boyfriend is terrible at taking pictures and
Mhm.
he always takes his pictures way too low. So let's say you're like taking a picture of two people, so it's not a selfie. Would you want to have the camera like aligned with the head, lower, or a little bit higher?
So for full body photos, you normally want the camera anywhere between the subject's chest and their waist. And the key thing to think about when it comes to taking photos is something called parallel posing. So bringing your head and your shoulders so they're kind of level with the camera. For instance, just for everybody who's at home, I'm going to stand up really quickly and I'm going to pose. Sorry, I'm wearing like yoga pants, posing for a photo like this. You can see, the camera is at about my waist level. My head is looking a little bit tinier. If I just lean forward a bit and bring my head toward the camera,
Ooh.
you can see that it looks much more connected versus standing like this. Yeah. So it's good because the lower camera angle definitely makes the body look longer. It's much better suited versus a high camera angle. I think a lot of people are like, oh, shoot me from a higher angle. But then when you shoot a full body photo from a higher camera angle, the head looks really big. the shoulders look really big. You tend to look shorter and kind of more compact overall versus a lower camera angle, which kind of shows off the lines of the body much better.
Okay, perfect. I'm learning so much right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so far you've told us number one is you work on self-image, and then it's
Mhm.
more like how to really use your camera. So what do you do next?
So it's a four-part, just so you have the whole thing. So one, we wanted to. Number three is how you position your body. I think, there's so much importance with the actual positioning of the weight of your body, kind of how you move yourself in relation to the camera. A lot of people will be focused on, okay, like the posing aspect, which is something
The
different than
hand
the
on the
position.
cheek.
Yeah, things like shifting your weight to one leg. Do you pop your hip one way versus the other? Does your shoulder go up? Does your shoulder go down? So just being able to identify for your particular body what works the best for you. And that's why I set everything up with activities. And then we have the group coaching on top of that to be able to talk through everything at every point of this. I think, in the past, when I first started doing the e-business portion of everything in 2020, instead of just like the in-person, I had a course and that was fine. But I think, when you're going through things like that, it's helpful because so much of it is loaded with our own belief systems and our own charged ideas of ourselves. It's helpful to be able to kind of unpack it because as you unpack it, you're able to really, identify what works and what doesn't work. So next we discuss, positioning of the body. And that's something that in itself is like, that's a really transformational, I think, way of looking at things for a lot of people because it will kind of fix, a lot of the different posing issues that people have. And then
Mhm.
finally, from there, we go into posing. So, like what to do with your hands, what to do with your legs, how to pose with other people, how to pose in different outfits, different situations, that kind of thing. So it's really cool. It's very meaningful, I think, especially seeing, the way that people change their perceptions about themselves. And I've been really enjoying it.
Yeah, because it's not just about pictures. Like you and I both know that it
Mhm.
touches on so much more, and you're teaching confidence. Like you're teaching people
Yeah.
how to be good in their skin, comfortable in their skin. Would you say that there's like universal pieces of advice that basically can make anyone in any body look better, or is it really
Yeah.
dependent on like the person?
Yeah, I think, there are things that are dependent on the person, but universally, always, just checking your posture, just kind of pretending an invisible string is pulling you from your feet all the way to the top of your head. Because the thing is, when we're taking photos of someone, we're taking a 3D object, we're compressing them into a 2D photo. So it's really easy for people to kind of look flatter, like not fatter, but flatter than they do in
Mhm.
real life and look like, static. And any opportunity we have to kind of lengthen anything or move it is a good opportunity to be able to give us a more dynamic photo. So posture for sure. The second thing is just putting your weight on one leg, not standing straight up and down like a soldier or a statue, but just kind of shifting to one side, whether you go to the side, whether you step back with one leg, those are kind of the two best. If you were to step forward on your leg, you're going to look shorter, which some people do want to look shorter, but just shifting that weight to one leg, either to the side or stepping back with your leg is something that's instantly going to make you look more photogenic because it just breaks up the lines.
Mm.
Another piece of advice I have is anything that you have two of body parts, if they're directly across from one another, like let's say, my shoulders are directly across from one another in relation to the camera, the viewer's eye is going to form a line that traps the viewer's eye in between.
Okay.
So if you see, it's like, and that's going to make you look kind of boxier and more flat. So just trying to break up the lines of when you have two of something. So for instance, if I just go like this, and then I have two eyes, tilt my head, this is a much more compelling photo because it breaks up those lines versus when I'm just straight up and down and straight on.
Okay, so one shoulder down and then a little tilt of the head.
Little tilt. Yeah. So just kind of, forming, like putting your weight on one leg, slanting the shoulders, and then having some kind of movement to the head as well, just to kind of break up the lines of the body.
Okay, now I have one more technical
Okay,
question,
perfect.
which is what do I do with my hands? Like when someone is trying
Yeah.
to take a picture of me, I'm like, my hands feel so awkward. What do I do with them?
Yeah, so I actually have a free hand posing guide, which is really convenient. If you go to freeposingguide.com,
Perfect.
you get the free hand posing
Straightforward.
guide. Yeah, so that just gives you 10 different things to do. I mean, the main thing is if you're going to have your hands down to your sides, you want to shake them out. You always want to make sure that your hands are relaxed. There's really three different ways that we show tension when we pose for photos. It can be our hands, it can be our mouth, like the smile that gets too tense, or it can be your eyes, like when your eyes look really strained when you're taking photos. Relax at the hands. You can keep them by your sides. Just have like a slight bend to your elbows at all times. You can place one in your pocket, the other to the side. You can kind of zip them up the lines of your body. There's lots of different ways that you can kind of position your hands. It's just really about keeping them relaxed. Try to avoid either having the backs of your hands or your palms to the camera. Kind of keep it to the side. Like have your thumbs to the front, or if they're up, your pinky to the front.
Okay,
I'm trying to go
amazing.
as much detail as possible for the people who are listening. I don't want you all to be confused. Posing, it's a mental activity, but it's also a physical activity as well. So it's, trying to just paint as much detail as possible.
Yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put your posing guide in the show notes. And I'm
Mhm.
also definitely going to put your Instagram because, guys, her Instagram is so good. Like, you just give really actionable, like, practical tips. And what I really love about everything that you do, you had this one video a while back, and it was you putting on, like, what's that the name of that clothes that you wear, like underclothes that's kind of like shape.
Shapermint.
What?
Yeah. Shapermint. So
Yeah,
it's the shapewear brand. I work with them often. They're definitely my favorite shapewear company.
yes. So, and you were showing like how you look before you put shapewear, how you look after.
Mhm.
And the message of the video was really about like, you're not doing this for other people. You're doing
Yeah.
this for yourself. Like, if you want to feel comfortable and confident in your own body, like, go ahead and do that. And it really is like, I feel like most of the work that you do is about like, how can you reclaim your power? And it's not about other people's opinions or what others might say, but it's about like your own self confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people are always going to have something to say. I was the fattest girl at a lot of my jobs, like when I was in the fashion industry. I still did Fashion Week for 19 seasons, like still got
Mm,
invited places. And then, within my industry too, you look at a lot of the people who are teaching posing in some capacity. I was definitely one of the first. I started doing in like 2016, but they tend to be in thinner bodies. And there's a lot of power in just owning who you are and being different, because I think on some level, no matter, even if you are that size 2 model, like you look at Bella Hadid's of the world and people like that, I'm sure there are things that they feel insecure about as well. We all have different insecurities regardless of who you are and where you're at life. And when you're willing to be yourself unapologetically, and you don't have to be like, a jerk about it and be like, this is who I am, baby, but
mhm.
just still continuing to do what you want to do in life. Not everything has to be, like you don't have to live and die by a mission, but just continue to achieve what you want to achieve and be the person you want to be, like not in spite of, but regardless of. I think that gives other people, the permission to do that as well. So I think that that's really important.
Yeah, because what you're really doing is like you said, giving people that permission to live their life because so many women think once I lose weight, then I'll start taking the pictures,
Mhm.
then I'll travel, then I'll go out. Like we have like once I experience this, then I'll go and do that. And it's like, okay, but how can we learn to feel more confident? How can we learn to take more pictures in our here and now body? Because your body doesn't need to change in order for you to change your self image.
Yeah, I think to go kind of to piggyback on that, I think that there is, a big kind of conflation between self-worth, self-image, and confidence. And it becomes a lot easier when you break it down. So essentially, when you're confident in something, it's because you feel like you're capable and competent. So I'm confident taking photos. I always use this example in my course. I am not confident skiing. I've gone skiing twice. I hate it. I don't like it. I'm not good at it, but it's a
Mhm.
skill, just like taking photos. But the thing is, my ability to ski and my competence and my confidence in skiing does not affect my self-image at all. And
Mm.
I think it can be really hard for people with photos, again, just kind of rewinding, like, because we see that as a reflection of ourselves when really it's just a skill. It'd be so silly for me to be like, hi, I live in California. It's like 80 degrees outside most of the time. I'm in Orange County by the beach, but I can't ski and I hate myself. It's like, okay, well, girl, like learn how to ski, like if that's how you'd say to me. And, it can be really challenging because it's, oh, my confidence and photos and self-esteem kind of all become together. And it becomes so much easier when you just break it down. Like the way to become confident is to practice, like practice taking photos, try taking photos. The more you do it, the better you'll become and the easier it'll become. And you'll build your competency, which will build your confidence in it. And then that confidence will build your overall self-esteem. So I think it's really helpful to kind of just like break it down a little bit and
Mm.
focus on the things. If you're trying to build your confidence in general as a human and your self-esteem, focus on what you're good at and keep on doing that. And then try other things that you're good at. And the more you do different things that you're good at, the better you'll feel and the more empowered you'll feel to be able to just step forward in the world as you are.
Yeah. And my biggest lesson that I'm going to share that I got from our conversation today,
Mm-hmm.
which is a lesson that we both know in business, and it's to keep doing what works. So I find that what a mistake that I've made, and I'm sure other people have made it too, is I'll take a picture and I'm like, ooh, this is a nice picture. I like how I look in this picture. And then I forget about it. And next time I have to go take a picture, I'm like, how do I pose? Do I pose on the right or the left? And it's like, I think what I'm going to do moving forward is when I take a picture that I like, analyze what about it made it good. Like, how was I posing? What side? What like angle? And so that I know, okay, this is what works. I'm going to do the same thing next time.
Yeah. And that's something I actually go over within that second kind of pillar and component when we're looking at, or actually it's the first one when we're talking about confidence and everything, is understanding what works, what doesn't. Our photos are just information. When you're able to look at a bad photo and really see it, not as a reflection of you and a shortcoming of you, but just information. Okay, was the lighting weird? What was weird about it? So I'm not going to do that again. You're able to kind of move from there and pivot going forward and take, the good results and implement them next time.
Yeah. I could ask you so many more questions, but what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to stalk your Instagram and I'm going to
Yeah.
gain as much as I can from it. But Christine, where can people find you, connect with you? And when you go see her Instagram and you love it so much and you follow her, send her a DM, let her know that you heard her on this podcast and that you
I'm never
loved
going to
her.
see the DM.
Oh, darn. Darn,
If you
I
need to get a
tried.
hold of me, email me. I will never respond. Yeah.
Okay,
It's
fair.
never going to be seen.
That's fair. So
Yeah.
where can they find you and
Yes,
not
I'm on
DM you?
Instagram. Yeah, you can email me. My bot will tell you how to email me basically. But I'm at Instagram at the Christine Buzan. I'm on TikTok and YouTube at Look Good in Photos. And then Facebook is Look Good in Photos by Christine Buzan. So yeah.
Beautiful. So that will all be in the show notes along with your hand posing guide. I think I have all of your links. And any like last parting words for all of our listeners?
Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, taking photos is a skill and it's a skill that you can learn. And I think it's a really important skill, especially, in our society and in this day and time. So treat it as if you're learning a different language or you're learning how to play a new sport. It's something you just keep on going at. The more you do it, the better you'll become. The better you become, the more you'll enjoy it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here. This was so fun.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
educational on my part. I'm going to take it and run with it. So I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you found it valuable, I would love if you would share it with someone you know that could benefit. If you're loving the show, don't forget to subscribe over on Apple Podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. I really love hearing feedback from you, so please leave a rating and review over on Apple to help us get in the ears of more people who need it the most. Finally, come hang out with me on Instagram at Sabrina Magna Health for more educational content and get up close and personal with me. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode.